For everyone who's been following us, this is a bit of a bonus series of how much it costs to travel around the world as a couple. It's from an 8-month trip we did a few years back. Hopefully you enjoy it.
Our sailing channel won't stop. We're still filming as we speak, so make sure to hit the bell if you'd like to be notified of any of our future videos. We're definitely planning some big adventures. In the next few months we'll be heading down south
To the Caribbeans!
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. We're super excited. We just got our mast up today, so things are moving along nicely.
Without further ado, enjoy the series.
Do you love to travel, but just think it's way too expensive, or have trouble saving up enough money to make it happen? In this video, we're going to give you a detailed explanation of all of our costs for traveling for 8 months over 12 different countries.
And this video is the general costs involved in organizing the traveling, the flights and all those things. And we also will be doing videos for each specific countries where we dive in more to details into those specific costs.
So check those out, they'll be down below and also on our channel. So if you're new here, consider subscribing if you're into all those sort of things and you want some more examples of budgets and how much it costs to travel to different locations. We're Wildly Intrepid. I'm Corey.
And I'm Alex.
And we're all about travel. We love to inspire other people and get you guys out and traveling for yourselves. So here's our breakdown of all our costs.
So over the course of our trip around the world, we spent $8,400 per person, which turns out to be pretty much cheaper than living in Canada.
So costs of traveling greatly vary depending on the country that you're visiting. Asia is going to be one of your cheaper options, whereas, Hawaii or Australia or Europe are going to be much more expensive. You almost got to budget differently for those countries.
As well for traveling, if you go during the off-season or if you avoid touristic places, you're going to be able to save quite a bit more money.
We found our most success spending the majority of our time in locations where it's more affordable. Not only do we enjoy spending time in those locations, but it allows us to spread our budget out a lot further and spend like 8 months traveling with over 12 countries. If we had focused only on European countries, we probably only would have traveled for maybe 3 months for the same amount of cost. Of course, it always depends what you do, and there's always ways to make it cheaper, and that's what we're hoping to provide you with. Flights are going to be the biggest part of your budget. It's going to vary so much. Like sometimes $1,000 flight, you can find a great deal on it for, $700 or, so you can save a lot of money here and there where you're choosing your flight. And even transfers, like we only ended up in Hawaii because it was convenient. There was a stopover along our way to Australia. So, if we were just choosing to go to Hawaii, maybe we wouldn't have it would have been more expensive, but because it was on the way, it didn't really eat into our budget very much. No.
So out of our $8,400, $2,327 was strictly for flights.
That's a big chunk of our money.
But there are ways of saving money. When you book your flights, just be flexible in when you're going to be leaving, as well as to where you're going to be flying to.
Also, if you would like more tips purely on the flights, if you'd like to see little hacks and stuff that we found were useful, let us know in the comments below.
Over our 8 months, we took 9 different flights, and initially we were debating trying to create that around the world ticket with set destinations, but then we realized that it actually would be cheaper and much more flexible, open to change, to just book our own flights stage by stage, because we went from Canada to Hawaii to Australia to then into Asia, kind of all over the place over there, and into Europe and back home.
Some countries require you to have an exit flight, and you just can't get around it in some cases. If you look back at our India video, we gave a little hack on how to kind of get around that in some cases, but it might not always work. So we're the type of travelers who don't like to plan too much ahead. We like to leave things very open so that we have opportunities to explore things that we didn't know existed. Maybe we find something out from a friend that we met at a hostel and they tell us about this crazy cool place that's, a few miles north. Well, if we already have a plane ticket from this place down south, it's gonna cost too much back and forth. You don't end up doing it. But if you have an open concept, okay, well, I have a visa here for a month. Well, maybe you don't buy your exit ticket. Maybe you don't plan so much so that you leave some room for extra things to happen out of the blue.
Insurance. That's a tricky one. On some trips with my family, we've never bought any insurance, never had any problems, and lots of those other countries in Asia are actually cheaper than even buying the insurance because you'll get medications or vaccine for quite a bit less money. For example, a rabies vaccine in India is only $8 versus if you go and buy it in Europe, it's almost $40-50.
Mm-hmm. So obviously that can eat into your budget a lot if you're, having to pay medical expenses in certain countries, whereas other countries it just won't matter. It'll actually be cheaper for you to not pay insurance. Often we break it into two categories. Well, if we're spending time in the United States, we have insurance for that period of time because that's the most expensive part of your insurance, almost guaranteed. And then if we're spending time in other areas and we'd like to have insurance for those areas, then we'll have those areas covered separately. And they're often, considerably less than the United States.
So for this trip, we decided to go ahead and book and get some travel insurance, which also included outdoor activities because we wanted to be covered for everything we were doing.
I'm sure if you've ever experienced getting insurance, travel insurance, there's all these stipulations. Oh, you can't do this. Don't make sure to not go skydiving or make sure not to go diving. You want to make sure you're covered for the activities you're planning on doing.
The insurance was $247 per person, and for this trip it ended up being quite useful because Corey ended up with acute hepatitis A in the hospital for 5 days.
After that experience, we've felt like it's always worth having that peace of mind because I remember feeling like I wasn't sure if everything was going to be covered. Even just that was kind of a stressful thing. And when you're sick, you don't want to have the added stress of not being able to pay for whatever you need to pay for. We recommend insurance just for that because it's a huge peace of mind. So just to give a quick example of how much a stay in the hospital could total, we were in Malaysia at the time and it cost us, we didn't pay it, the insurance company paid $1,180 some odd dollars. Obviously that would have eaten into our budget quite a bit if we didn't have that money. And actually, another note, the insurance company was great. Somebody from the company or somebody that was organized by the company came and dealt with all the paperwork and paid us back really in a timely manner. Basically by the time I had made it out of the hospital and back to the hotel, that was all getting dealt with. So that was really nice. We didn't have to wait till we came home to get paid or something like that.
Visas. That's a little bit of a tricky one because depending where you're from, you're going to have different costs. We're Canadians, we're part of the Commonwealth, which allows us to go to quite a few different countries without having to pay for visas when we get there. So most of the time when you arrive at the airport, they'll stamp you with 30 days on average at no extra cost. But some countries, there was a couple of fees.
You got to look at it on a country by country basis. We can't give you, a generic idea. So in total, we spent an extra $143 on visas to either have them extended in some cases and just to be allowed in some countries. So a couple quick examples. Australia cost us $20 extra for our visa each, as well as our Indonesia, we wanted to spend more than the typical month. We had a 2-month visa, yes, and that was $84.
And that one we had to apply for it before getting into the country, so we dealt with that one when we were back in Canada.
So just logistically, you got to kind of look into the place you want to go, and it's as simple as a Google search. You'll find everything you need online nowadays. Accommodation, we ended up spending in total $1,268 each, and that was for many different types of accommodation, from the cheapest of cheap, like What was the cheapest night we stayed? Like $2?
$6 in Indonesia.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but like, split
For
that.
one
That's
night.
that's $3 each.
Which is the key thing. Traveling with someone, you'll be able to save quite a bit of money on accommodation and sometimes transportation.
We'll just split a private room and we'll save money. It'll be cheaper than
Yes.
us both getting a bed in a hostel.
Mm-hmm. And also that budget for accommodation, we stayed in hostels, hotels, bungalows, most of it. But when it came to our time in Australia, we didn't spend much money because we were traveling with friends, visiting family, well, their family and our friends.
In Europe, we spent most of the time again with family. We visited some friends that we had made along our trip, and that as well saved us some money. Easy hack to understand: try to travel with in places where you have family, or just be friendly. Make friends with people around the world. You'll be surprised at how those connections influence where you decide to go and how you visit those areas. We wouldn't have spent as much time in some of these places as we did, or if we did, we would have spent way more money.
So Asia, it's really cheap accommodations, so it doesn't really matter. But if you want to travel to those really bit more expensive countries, you can also try Couchsurfing, which we did when we were in Paris, in France.
Couchsurfing is wonderful just for, again, meeting people. They're often travelers themselves. They're interested in hearing about travel stories. You can really hit it off with some of these people, which sometimes turn into a guided experience where they're able to show you around or spend some of their time if they're not busy working or something like that. It's not just a place to stay. Couchsurfing is the whole act of actually spending time with the person and getting to know them.
Experiencing the country, the culture.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, some couch surfers don't like when somebody just shows up and like drops off their bag and basically treats it like a hotel because it's not a hotel.
Go get a hotel at that point. For accommodation, we spent anything between $6 to the cheapest and upwards to $80 a night in Europe in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
For an average in Asia, it was $10 to $20 per night for a room for two.
We kind of travel reasonably comfortably considering how low our budget is.
Like kings.
We are picky about places, like we start to look at the main things. Is the bed comfortable? Is the toilet in half decent condition? Does it look like it's been cleaned? You can also do it really cheap. Like in Hawaii, one of our places was fully booked. The only somewhat affordable accommodation was completely booked. So we ended up crashing on the beach.
Yep.
Now, it was not the most wonderful experience for sleep, but it'll always be a story that sticks with us because we were sleeping on the beach. We ended up running into all these other people that were kind of doing the same thing. They just kind of surf during the day and sleep on the beach because they can't really afford accommodation. And then we wake up at like 4 a.m. We're getting poured on with rain and then having to find somewhere to dry off our stuff and wait for the sun to come up. Anyways, it just adds to the experience. It doesn't sound all that nice actually, but it was actually memorable.
Food and alcohol was our biggest expense. We spent $2,466 US per person, but it included going to the restaurant almost every single meal, except when we were visiting with family and friends.
Mm-hmm. We like to visit cultures and try the foods. Like food is part of our enjoyment in travel. Food is how you experience the culture a little more like vibrantly, I guess. And we love food. We love different types of food. It's actually cheaper to have your food cooked for you in a restaurant rather than cook it yourself and buy the products yourself and cook it yourself. We like to eat a lot of street food, so that tends to be on the cheaper end of things as well. And the other thing that makes it cheaper is if you buy your own food, you get charged tourist prices.
In Asia, we were spending between $5 and $10 a day for meals, and that's for 3 meals a day most of the time. And when it comes down to food, sometimes when you're doing a lot of transportation going to and from different places, what we found worked best for us was to just go at a market, buy a bunch of different snacks, so that we would have food with us as we're traveling for the full day, because first off, you don't really know exactly where they're going to be stopping, and you don't really know if the food will be good.
Most of the time the food was good and it was nice to stop, but it's always, like she said, it's great to have just a backpack full of random goodies. And the snacks, are often different in other countries. Don't try to find your typical Americanized snacks. Just try some new things. You'd be surprised at how tasty some of the things that other countries have, and you can't find them here back home. So take advantage of that.
And in that category, there's also all the extra costs related to water, because in Asia, you can't really drink water from the tap. Some places you can, so we end up having to purchase water bottles quite often. But we found ways of reducing how much plastic we would buy, as well as how much money we would spend by buying big jugs of water.
Yeah, it reduced the cost, but it was more about the plastic. It becomes a ridiculous amount of plastic. If we can avoid that, we will. So that's our main goal behind refilling bottles, and we really like the refill stations.
Yes. We did buy some beers every once in a while. We tend to try to wake up early in the morning and go surf, so we don't drink that much. Once in a while, we'll have fun depending where we are or with who we are.
If it's like the beach party sort of lifestyle, we'll join them. We're gonna be part of that. But I'll get way more enjoyment out of a fresh fruit smoothie that is like plentiful in these countries where they have lots of fresh fruit. I'd way rather drink that at my lunchtime than a beer. Not to say I won't have a beer if I'm feeling like having a beer, and it's more affordable. But you can expect your budget to be a little higher if you're somebody who likes to drink a lot more.
Mind you, in Asia, beers were like $1 a bottle, so it wasn't that much money. But then when it came to buying beers in Australia or Europe or Hawaii, well, it's bigger prices. You'll spend maybe $5 on your beer, if not more.
Transportation. We ended up spending $1,268. Obviously, that number will change a lot, but for our style of staying in one location for a while, then traveling for a bunch, then staying in one location, basically it'll all depend on the way you travel. We traveled many different ways, often closer to the free or very cheap method or local way of traveling.
Like, our biggest expenses when it came to transportation were mainly in Australia and Europe, because trains, buses, or fuel for a car were a bit more expensive. But then when it came down to Asia, we would spend a couple dollars for hours worth of being driven from one place to another by so many different means. Like, we took boats, buses, rickshaws,
jeepneys.
We were on a scooter, 3 of us, with our big backpacks once. Because we were trying to catch a bus that was leaving in like 5 minutes. And the guy's like, just jump on with me, I'll bring you there.
I mean, these are in places that they have a family of 8 all on this little scooter. They somehow fit on there. The last person has probably got this much seat, but they're holding a baby at the same time.
And in the cheaper countries, that's what we ended up doing. Renting a scooter for the full day, or for multiple weeks, because it allowed us so much more freedom, and it was really affordable. For $4 to $6 per day, we would have a scooter and spend an extra $1, and you've got a full tank of gas.
Having the scooter when we were surfing in Indonesia was like a godsend, because the scooter had a little support for the surfboards, and we were able to go explore all these different areas that you would. Like, how would you get from one surf spot to the next surf spot? I don't even know. Like, you have to...
hitchhike.
Yeah.
Which we also did in some places. We did do a little bit of hitchhiking. Not that much, because transportation was just so cheap in lots of places. Even Hawaii had really cheap transportation. It was like $5 for a bus ticket to go around the island.
Getting back to the scooters for a second, they can be intimidating, especially in like Bali or some of the bigger cities where there's just like the lane is filled. Your side of the lane is filled like 8 scooters wide, and that continues for at least a few rows back, and they're all moving seamlessly. Well, there's a flow, and you'll start to figure it out as you practice, but it's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, of course there's accidents. There's accidents that happen all the time. Wear a helmet. That'll save a lot of lives. Without it, we would not have seen nearly as much as we saw. We wouldn't have gone nearly as far. And we wouldn't have been able to just like up and go whenever we wanted to go visit a new thing we had just heard about that afternoon.
We spent $423 on activities, which is kind of funny because I feel like we did so many different activities, but most of them didn't cost any money. Like, we would go snorkel with our $20-$30 mask and tuba, and we had hours, days of fun.
We found this new love for snorkeling, or we would go and rent a surfboard that, it cost us, some money, obviously, but
$6 per day for a surfboard.
And that's your fun for your day, and like you're not going to do much else because you're going to be exhausted. We also did lots of paid activities in certain locations that we wanted to do, like deep water soloing, swimming with whale sharks.
Or the zoo in Singapore. Like, those were some of the more expensive activities.
We went to the Great Barrier Reef with our friends in Australia. We did some caving, cliff jumping wasn't expensive. But,
free of charge.
Deep water soloing, which is when you're climbing in Thailand. Well, that's where we did it anyway. Where you're climbing on rocks above the water, and you have no rope protection. You just jump in the water when you're done climbing.
But that was only $21 for one person for the full day, including boat, the climbing equipment, and food.
We did a bit of shopping around for every activity because we realized how cheap we could have as far as a budget for activities, even though that's our main focus of traveling. We don't just go and travel to drink on the beach. We love to go out and do things. But there was just so many free options or really cheap options that we were very picky about the more expensive options, let's call them, $20 plus.
All that being said, we don't necessarily like to join into guided tours. We like to go do our own things at our own rhythm. So there's a lot of hiking or going to waterfalls and those kind of things that we just asked around and met some people and then figured out where the trailhead was and just went and explored by ourselves. Sometimes you didn't really end up where you thought you would, but sometimes you found some even nicer and breathtaking views.
There's definitely some pros to guided tours. You'll definitely gain a lot more than just like the beauty of the scenery.
Like Sagada Caves.
Yeah, like there's been experiences where we either had no choice to take a guided tour or we just decided to take one, and there were good experiences in general. It's just being from a guiding industry, we typically like to kind of explore, and we're very adventurous. We're not afraid to try new things and try to find something even though we don't know where it is. But if you're different and you like your guided tours, that's fine. You're just gonna have to maybe budget a little bit more for that.
And we also avoided some of the more expensive things, like in Koh Phi Phi, there's that famous place, a famous beach where Leonardo DiCaprio goes in the beach, and we would have liked to go, but then we realized that it was just so expensive that at one point you try to figure out, is it really worth that much money, or am I gonna have way more fun spending less money somewhere else? And all that money, well, I can stay there for an extra 3 days if I don't go in that activity.
But because it was very touristy and it was a very popular sort of destination, they were ripping people off.
Sometimes another nice way of combining activities is to turn your transportation from point A to B into an activity. So in Germany, we were trying to get to where we were going to fly out of the country. And we ended up getting onto a boat tour on the Rhine River instead of taking a bus ride or train ride around. So we ended up having front row in the boat, bought a beer, and had a guided tour of all the different castles around us. Meanwhile, we were getting to where we needed to be.
Definitely a pro tip there. Lots of combining of things that you can do. Even just a scooter ride. For me, that was fun. That was an activity in itself. Just exploring the winding roads of a certain area or
12 hours scooter ride with the two of us and two big backpacks getting across Sumbawa Island. That was fun.
I actually built with a multi-tool, Alex's multi-tool, and some string and some bamboo I found on the beach. I built this rack to support Alex's backpack because with my backpack and Alex's backpack and the two of us, we just couldn't fit on the scooter. Like, it was not going to be a comfortable 8-hour ride. So we made it work though, and it was a crazy adventure. It was wonderful. Miscellaneous.
So sunscreen, for an example, it's way cheaper to buy it back home in Canada comparing to trying to find some, first off, into another country that has high import taxes.
Mm-hmm. And even some products, like if you're looking for something very specific, you probably want to bring that along with you. And something we found in Asian countries, they like to bleach their skin. That's just it seems like it's the trend or something, because when you're looking for a bar of soap, for an example, it's very difficult to find a bar of soap that doesn't have some sort of bleaching agent in it. You can find it. We did find some.
And some of the costs in Miscellaneous were also for guidebooks. So we did buy a Lonely Planet, which was about $38. But you don't really need it for every single country, especially nowadays with internet being so much more all over the place. Mm-hmm. You can almost get away without having a guidebook with you.
And another pro tip, if you don't want to spend money on the guidebook, if you only need a little bit of information, you can get the guidebook on like a Kindle or on your phone. I mean, Alex really likes her hard books, but she started tearing the pages out of the book as we weren't using it.
And we also spent a little bit of money in Skype. So Skype is actually free. You can talk person to person online. But if you want to do phone calls to actual phone numbers, you could buy really cheap packages and connect with your family back home and have a little chat.
And that was before we knew about things like Google Hangouts or I mean, there's a bunch of apps out there now. Like Google Hangouts is completely free. We can do the exact same thing without spending any money. So that's a plus as well. Or like Facebook calling or something like that. Facebook calling, you can't do it to a home landline. For Souvenirs, we ended up spending $233. We mostly just got stuff like this.
Souvenirs that you could wear with you. Necklace. So we tried to stick with small little things. Or flags to put on our backpacks.
Yeah, there was the odd thing that we got like this. Alex got this thing, which is a singing bowl. It makes a really nice sound when you can actually do it. And so we got stuff like this, and I picked up a didgeridoo in Indonesia. But the problem with these things is they just take up way too much space, and they're heavy. So you don't want to be filling your bag and having to... It's actually really annoying when you get your bag packed and you realize, I forgot the big thing that I didn't put in my bag. That's why it packs so nicely for a change. And then you're having to repack it. And anyways, it gets really tedious. So avoid that and just get small souvenirs. You'll still remember the experiences just as much. Try to put them closer to the end of the trip, so it's not as much carrying around.
Or turn a souvenir into something practical. Mm-hmm. My bikini died. I need a new one. Might as well make it a souvenir.
Yeah. So traveling full time for 8 months can actually not cost you quite as much as you think. I hope we were able to prove that to you with our video. And if you need more details on specific countries, please feel free to look back at our other videos that we've created.
Or that will be coming up, depending when you watch this movie.
Yeah.
So with only $8,400 per person, I felt like a queen. Mm-hmm. We lived so many crazy adventures, stayed in beautiful accommodation, that you had your own room, own the food that came to you. You would order in the morning in your room pretty much, and they'd bring you breakfast. We lived incredibly in those 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, for just a little over $1,000 a month, we could not live here nearly as luxuriously anyway. You could actually spend less money while you're traveling the world, seeing all of these new amazing things, having all of these amazing new experiences, than you do living your mundane lifestyle at home. So this is what influences us to continue to travel and to help people like yourselves realize that it maybe isn't as expensive as you once thought.
And if you're by yourself and you're scared of traveling to those other countries, don't be. You'll quickly realize that there's so many other people just like you traveling by themselves, and you meet people while you're traveling that you end up spending time with them.
We've met plenty of people traveling by themselves. young women, older ladies, people from everything in between. So don't be afraid. I almost guarantee if you're any bit social or you put yourself in a social situation, you'll make friends and you won't have to do those activities by yourself. You won't have to continue exploring by yourself. You can just kind of hop along with some other people. Don't let that stop you from traveling. You don't need to have two people. It just, for us, it made certain things easier. So if you're new here, consider subscribing. We're all about trying to help you guys make your dreams become your reality. We want people to enjoy their lives and be able to travel just like we do.
We've been traveling for quite a while, and I started traveling as a little 4-year-old kid with my tiny little backpack all the way around the world, and we're constantly learning new tips, new ways of traveling. And if you have any questions about how to save money or where to go and different ways to travel, just make sure to leave them in the comments down below.
I only started traveling later in my life. Actually, when we met, I started traveling more outside of Canada. Before that, I hadn't traveled very much. But it was very refreshing to see her and her family and learn that it's actually possible for a full family to travel. You have to change the way you want to travel and change the way you live your life on a day-to-day basis to make traveling more of a priority. There's nothing stopping you from traveling. So get out there and start traveling.
So during all that trip, we started to realize that we wanted to try different ways of traveling around the world. So we recently purchased a 33-foot sailboat, which we've been renovating and getting ready to go explore the world. And we also have a series about that adventure in the sailboat. So if you're interested into that, just check out our playlist, and we'll put a link in the description below.
Mm-hmm.